And like we're saying, like, so, you know, one, as parents or like a leader or guardian with youth, it's there's going to be a moment when they're going to become curious about sex.
Yeah.
They're going to be, you know, wanting to play and to explore. So as leaders in their lives, how can we better educate them? So then they have all the tools that they can have to make choices that honor them, you know. And a part of this was, you know, like for me growing up, you know, it was very much don't do this, or, you know, then education with school was like, here's a condom. That was basically it. And then I went to college and went on a rebellious little spree because I had a lot more freedom in college than I had when I was at home. But I wasn't taught how to have those conversations. And then I ended up putting myself in some icky situations. And ultimately, I think about, you know, being a parent or a guardian or a leader for children. We want them to be safe and want them to like honor their bodies. So it's like, what's holding us back as adults to have this conversation? Where our fear? What are we uncomfortable about? So first, you know, I think about it as like, as leaders, it's like, where's your story around sex?
Happy Friday, youth developer. Patty ZITO, your nutritional therapy consultant and lifestyle coach at your service. I have with me Ashley May in the house. Ashley Mays is a sex love communication coach. And yes, you guessed it, another lifted coach in the community. Ashley, welcome to the Youth Developer.
So thank you.
Welcome and happy Friday to you.
Happy Friday to you too.
I'm so excited. I know that we took a picture already, but I'm going to show it again. Yes. We were in Oregon at the same time 2 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm. So yes. Oregon's awesome. It's one of my favorite places. I've been there more this past year, well, 2020 and this year, than I've been anywhere else in the U.S.
Oh, really? Okay, cool. Yeah, we're definitely going to go back because I feel very connected to the Pacific coast. And if you haven't checked it out, today's youth developer video is on our trip to Cannon Beach. Have you been there?
No, I haven't.
Ooh. It's magical. If you like if you watched the Goonies when you were young.
Yes, I love that. I randomly watched that movie like all the time.
Yeah, it's really cool. Like I wasn't really geeking out. Jimmy he was totally geeking out on it. And then when I was there, I was like, oh, I remember this. I remember as a child being like, whoa.
That's so awesome. Booty traps.
Exactly. Holy cow. Yeah. So that's there. And then we went to Ecola State Park, which is 17 minutes away from Cannon Beach, which has such a beautiful view. It's like a hidden place that not many people know about. And we're grateful that we took the advice of Tim Mackey, who said, you got to go there. Awesome. It's like a secret spot, and all the spots were just so beautiful.
So good. I do. I think Oregon has like some of the most beautiful nature. Like when I'm there, I'm like, oh my goodness. And it reaffirms how like much like nature is medicine. It's like you get in there and you're connecting, and it's like it's healing, and
It was, as I was walking to Haystack Rock, so I felt like I was going through all these different like seasons. So from afar, it was very windy. The closer I get, it was getting cold. I'm like, whoa, windy. I put on my hoodie. Jimmy said that I looked like an astronaut because I had like 2 hoodies on. My jacket zipped up. And then the closer, I totally took my shoes off. I touched the water, and it was like, I feel like I went through like all these seasons before getting there. It's
very metaphoric, right? It's like, it's just like going through seasons in life as you're traveling to the location.
Exactly. And this is not a sponsored video yet. Now, if you want me to sponsor Oregon, I will. Whoever's watching this.
I like send it to Oregon, like they're like nature, like
Hashtag.
yeah.
Actually, I hashtag Cannon Beach. So we'll see. We'll see.
That's awesome.
We'll see. And I know today we're going to talk about sex, love, and communication. And you and I already had a conversation before. I'm so excited because I know I've been talking to you about how important it is to have the conversation instead of hiding it under the rock, where our children or your niece, your nephew, your grandson can find out all this information from anywhere else. And then it's gonna be known.
We're going to as kids, we're curious, and so we're going to figure out how to learn about it one way or the other. So as like being, adults, guardians for children, it's so valuable to have that conversation with them before they go and like experience it on their own, because they're going to go to things like Pornhub, or they're going to look at magazines, and there's a very false representation of what sex is in those things. And I mean, they're great. They serve the purpose of what they're serving for those things, but like to educate a child or even adults at this point too, like it's not ideal to go to that. There's other sources that can be similar to that, but those are just not the best. And so as parents, as guardians, it's so great, to start having it as like a normal conversation. And this is something I say often is like, I'm on a mission to make sex being something that we talk about, like it's our favorite, like what's our favorite kind of food, right? Our favorite restaurant, right? Getting it out there, because we have been taught as a society that it's a taboo thing. It's negative. It's a no, it's behind the doors, even in the 60s, like I think of like Hugh Hefner, who came in and like he created Playboy, but his idea was just like make it a part of something that we talk about. And a lot of it is like sex. Yeah. Oh yeah. I did. And in Lifted, I did a presentation on him in level 3. I think it was level 3. When we were doing a presentation, and I missed where like Mark was assigning us the names. And so I got to pick mine, and I was like, I'm doing
level 2.
Hugh Hefner on level 2.
Yeah, level 2.
Yeah. And so, I really like, there was this documentary, American Playboy, it's on Amazon. And I just got to see a lot about like what he was doing. He was just disrupting, right? Disrupting a little bit of what our society thinks about with sex. Like at that time and that day, the movies were, where the husband and wife were in the bedroom and they were separated by a nightstand. 2 twin beds separated by a nightstand, and then like when they were going to have sex, they'd push the beds together. And so it's like he helped really disrupt and create it being a little more normal. And so really that's what I want to do too, is help it even be more normal. Talk about it with our children, talk about it with our partners, because sex is why we're all here.
Exactly. It's a, you gave me this picture of I Love Lucy. That's didn't they have separate bedrooms actually?
They might have. I know they had separate beds, but they might have had separate bedrooms. Yeah. Which actually, in this day and age, I think having separate bedrooms is okay too. Having your bed that you have together. And then there's times where you get to have your own space, because sometimes people like sleep better when they're not being cuddled, or like, sometimes one of our partners may have like, just like have a lot of heat coming out. And so it's okay to sleep in separate beds on occasion. But
I'm a snuggler, so I'm like, but you're okay. So the people are all different. We're all different, right?
Well, it's talking about like what you want, what you need, your desires and stuff. And so it's like having that as something that is possible to do, where now it's considered, if you have a separate bedroom and you're sleeping in separate beds, then there must be something going on. No, I'm just trying to sleep.
And your spouse may also be in a different time. I know for me, I put a lot of pressure on Jimmy. It's like, you know what, so and so, they go to bed at the same time, and Jimmy.
His alter ego.
Jimmy goes to bed way later than me. And that for him is actually his alone time, where I have my alone time in the morning. And so when he wakes up early, I'm like, what are you doing? This is my space, right?
Go away.
And I'm in the living room having, like, journaling, reading, and if he comes in, I'm like, what are you doing? So it's different. We're very different. So yeah, but we've had the conversation. So yeah, so like I know for Jimmy, it's like he's not there to have anything separate bedrooms. But I've learned what's up. It's accepting. Okay, does he have to? No, it actually works better for him because I want him to have his space, right? I want to be selfless in that sense of like, that's how you do it. I mean, and it took a few years. I mean, full transparency.
Oh yeah,
you know? I mean, I was nagging him, like, I thought marriage, blah, blah. And what it is us communicating, right? What's important for us. So I love that. And that word that you use, disrupting, I associated that with creating good trouble. I forget who's the person.
I like
It's a
that.
politician. I don't know if it's a politician or, but anyway, I love it because disrupting is good. I know Jimmy likes the word what's the word? Oh my goodness.
Is it dismantle or just
Yes.
dismantle?
Yes. Say it again. How do you pronounce it?
Dismantle.
Ball.
Dismantle.
Exactly. I'm gonna keep it, right? There's gonna be zero editing in here.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah,
it's the real and raw.
I call it unlearning, right? Creating clear space. There's a lot of like new and lifted coaches that we get to mentor, and they're like, oh, I don't know anything about coaching, and I'm like, great, because I had to do a lot of unlearning from a lot of patterns that were not helping my clients as a nutritional therapy consultant. And now I'm reshifting. So good, because you're a white canvas.
yes. And it's great to be a white canvas, right? You get to paint it however you want. There's a lot of less things that you have to do to like rewrite all of that, right?
Exactly. It's less messy for sure. Yeah. So I love it. And I'm so happy that you're here. I know for me too, I'm coming out of a tradition where, talking about sex, and especially in a video in this setting, it's like, well, Patty, what are you doing? And so, you know what? I might have some unsubscribers. Well, goodbye. Thank you. I love you. Thank you for supporting me for the past 4 or 5 years. My goal and our goal, Jimmy and I, is life to the full. And I've noticed that in our society, like you said, there's a lot of shame. There's a lot of feeling uncomfortableness, right? And it's like, it's getting comfortable on the things that are, they're God given. I mean, hi, right? Like God creating sex. This is a topic to talk about. So I'm excited to have you in here. So
yes, thank you. It's one of my favorite things to talk about. So
yeah. Why don't you tell us maybe a little bit, start us off, like, how did you even get into this topic and why this motivated you?
Yes.
In your own journey?
Yeah. I'll do my best to make it a short version.
Yeah.
So, I grew up in a Southern Baptist family. My dad is a preacher, and it was very yes or no, do this, don't do this. And so in that, like, I had this where if I don't do these things, or if I do these, like, if I do these, then I'll be loved. If I if I do these other things I'm told not to, then I'm going to be unlovable, right?
Yeah.
And so that created the story for me of a belief that I took on, is that I'm unlovable. And I have to prove myself by doing these certain things that make everybody else happy rather than myself.
Right.
And I did the traditional thing. It's like you go to high school. I went to college, I got a master's degree, then I met a boy, I got married, we bought a house, we were looking at starting a family, and then we ended up opening up a gym and started like more of the entrepreneurial life.
Yeah.
And that was a little bit of like, oh, this is different than what I have been
Yeah.
taught, it's like
Yeah.
get a job and do this, and like
Right.
here's these things, and so that created a little bit of a disrupt. And then we were in a time in our relationship where we were struggling, and a lot of it was because we didn't know how to communicate. And
Mm.
so some experiences happened, some things happened, masterminds and workshops that we went to, and we got
Yes.
to see how people were communicating. And
Mm.
then like we started bringing that into our relationship, and it really, really helped our relationship in a lot of ways. Like both of us started feeling heard, understood, desired in a lot of ways.
Mhm.
And it was really nourishing for our relationship. And then fast forward, as we started this journey of like healing and learning, understanding our own wounds that we had brought into the relationship, we saw where it's like when we came to the relationship, we fixed each other with the wounds. They brought
Mm.
us together, and they helped us complete ourselves, like feel
Mm.
completed. And then as we were in this healing journey and healing our wounds, our relationship started not working anymore, because what brought us together, we
Mm.
were able to fulfill for ourselves. And in that, sometimes when that happens in relationships, you can still stay together and work together, like you and Jimmy, right? Like you're
Mhm.
still in the
Yes.
relationship together as you're on this journey. And for me and my ex-husband, it just didn't work anymore. Like we kept on, like anytime we kept staying in the relationship, we would bring in those patterns that just didn't work and operate anymore. So we decided to dissolve our marriage, and so that we could both be more of ourselves. And in that was, I realized after my marriage ended, where I was really holding myself back in sex, even being in that relationship where I'm married and we're like, you have sex and you get to play and explore. I was still very timid around it.
Mm. Mhm.
And I just realized, it looked back and I was like, one, I wasn't really taught in high school or, growing up about sex. It was don't do it or you'll
Mhm.
go to hell.
Mhm.
Don't do it,
Mhm.
or here's a condom.
Mhm.
And it's like, and then, the anatomy classes, they didn't really tell you, they did, there was no teaching of, understanding your own anatomy and how it operates, boundaries, having the conversation, the
Mm.
communication, safe sex, like they talk
Mhm.
about wearing a condom, but they don't talk about how to communicate
Mm.
with someone that you're going to be having sex with, of like,
Wow.
hey, where are you at in this? Have you been
Wow.
tested?
Mhm.
Right. And all of this. And so like, I just saw post marriage where the lack of my education impacted my relationships before him, and then
Yeah.
even in my marriage I was very timid to express myself because I didn't understand or know what I wanted. I didn't really know that, like, hopefully I can say this on here, clitoris was like, a full, an organ that is made for purely pleasure. It's
Yeah.
created, and so it's like as I started understanding mine, it was like I realized how valuable it is to understand your own anatomy, and then
Yeah.
talking about like what you want and your need and having that communication, and then understanding, like, we're taught that like fantasies are taboo or they're, weird, and um, like fantasies are fun to like play and talk about and explore. It doesn't mean you have to like act them out, but it's just
Yeah.
like it gives an opportunity to have a conversation about it.
Mhm.
Oh, this is something that like turns me on, or like I like the idea of this. And so then you can talk about that, and then how to bring a part of that into your relationship.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's like, yeah. So it's staying away from being so robotic on the do's and the don't. It's very hurtful. And like you mentioned, we're in this journey, right? Especially when it comes to heaven and hell. People want the ticket to heaven and avoid hell. And the Bible talks about heaven on earth, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you and I tell people this all the time, go Google heaven and hell and a research, search, you get zero. Put heaven and earth on a Bible Gateway, whatever, and you'll get tons of scriptures on that.
Mm.
And so we're in a personal, and I'll tag our podcast in here because I will.
Yeah. Yes.
Jimmy does a wonderful series on heaven and earth on it, so I'll put it in here too
That's
because
awesome.
Yeah. And
that.
yeah, of course it is okay to talk about any part of the body that God created, right? Like, so yes, the
It's
answer is
there
yes.
for a reason, and that even actually makes me think of too, like us as a society has, we think, like when it comes to sex, it's to, reproduction, right? To have kids,
Mhm,
right? And it's just something that you're supposed to be doing as a
mhm,
married couple,
mhm,
right? And so it can be, we're taught to have it as a goal oriented
mhm,
thing,
mhm.
right? When I something I believe is sex is medicine. It can be very healing, and so taking away it being about the orgasm, about like it being about having kids, but allowing it to be a connection with two human beings in a way that can be so deep. I mean, there's a soul connection that can really happen with it,
Yeah.
right? So it's like having that as like the focus, the meaning of it, and then all the other stuff works. There's different, and then like for men, like they're taught, if you can't stay hard, or if if he doesn't have like, if the woman doesn't have an orgasm, that means something about them, or like if and it's like there's so many little stories that get played, and there's also a lot of different types of orgasms to have too. It
Yeah.
doesn't have to be like what we've been taught,
Or what the movies show.
is what the movies show, right?
Got it. Yeah. I know for me, this is completely something, especially when it comes to communication, that's something for transparent here. Like Jimmy and I looking at this differently, right? Uh sometimes I hope I can say this, right? He's like, yeah, like a good Christian soldier or something like that. He mentioned it. I was like, what do you mean by that? So we laugh, right, about certain things that we just gotta unlearn. And when you said, well, there's something you said a couple of times. It's like it's communication. It's how to communicate, right?
Mhm.
And it's totally okay to know each other what we want. It's like Spice Girls, right? Tell me what you want, what you really want. I'll tell you what I want.
What I really, really want. Yeah. I'll tell you what I want.
If that's my song for my goal setting. I probably link it in here. So no, I'm kidding. I'm not doing
There
it.
you go. Spice Girl song too.
Exactly. It's important, and I know that in a society that focuses so much, yes, to help others, it's going to be very hard to help others when you're not filling your cup first. If you are not doing this to you, like giving out of a full cup. And right now, society is full of overwhelmed, stressed out professionals and parents. And we don't take that time for ourselves for self-discovery. I believe that's another word that you mentioned. Like
Hmm.
self wait, is that what you said? No, understanding of our own anatomy. That's what you said. That was
Hmm.
really cool. So yeah, so what would you say, or what would you recommend for, so most of the people in this channel are parents, teachers, principals, or work with youth, summer camp directors, they're at some point, well, I know a lot of people also follow us for our trips, so they want life to the full. We might
Yes.
have to do two separate YouTube channels in here. I
I
like
like
to
it. Yes.
combine it in one because my mission is for everyone who considers themselves a youth developer to understand that the best form of youth development is by us, the adults, right? Let's
Hmm.
stop putting the pressure on the future, us living life to the full, to our
Hmm.
God given potential, our full strength. And then the children be like, you know what? Look at that. I want that. Look at that energy, right?
Yeah, yes. It's
So,
like they want to see that and be a part of it. And like we're saying, like, so, one, as parents or like a leader or guardian with the youth, it's there's going to be a moment when they're going to become curious about sex.
yeah.
They're going to be, wanting to play and to explore.
Yeah.
So as leaders in their lives, how can we better educate them, so
Yes.
then they have all the tools that they can have to make choices that honor them?
Hmm.
And a part of this was, like for me growing up, um, it was very much don't do this, or, then education with school was like, here's a condom. That was basically it.
Yeah.
And then I went to college and went on a rebellious little spree because I had a lot more freedom in college than I had when I was at home. I wasn't taught how to have those conversations. And then I ended up putting myself in some icky situations. And ultimately, I think about, being a parent or a guardian or a leader for children. We want them to be safe and want them to like honor their bodies. So it's like, what's holding us back as adults to have this conversation? Where our fear? What are we uncomfortable about? So first, I think about it as like, as leaders, it's like, where's your story around sex?
That's a great question.
Yeah. And it's like, what are your beliefs around it? What do you feel about it? What are you thinking? And then like, how can you, if you really want to help educate and support these youth coming into adulthood, educate them in sex and letting them like really understand that, it is something to be considered sacred, and you can have fun and play with it too, but like it's really like about honoring yourself and honoring your body, both men and women, right? And so it plays both ways, because there's times where we make decisions and things happen, and things are said, and so that's why rape is like that's why rape happens, that's why pregnancies happen. It's because there's not the education around it. And then also like just so learning it, and then learning about the anatomy. So I have this is the sexual practices of Kadaushka.
What's Kadaushka?
It's a type of
What's that?
practice.
It's
Anyway, it's a practice. So it's a book that's based off of really having talking about sex as being medicine and healing, and creating it as like a practice. And it even has in here, and this is something I really like have people look at too. So you can, even on here, there's the different types of vulvas, right? And so like even growing up, I was like, I just thought mine was the same as everyone else's, or theirs was the same as mine, and learning that like there's different types, right? There's also different types of penises, right? And so it's like learning that there's different types. So like you're unique to you, and there's these
I
main
did not
ones.
know that.
I know, I didn't either. Right? Yes, I know. When I discovered that, I was like, oh my goodness, this makes so much sense, and like it's like some like how, and this book teaches you how to communicate with each other in your vulva, with your vulva and with your penis, right? And so it's like understanding that, and that there's differences, and it's okay, and it talks about like different types of orgasms and what can be had, when we're only taught like there's one type of orgasm and it's both at climax, and there's so many different ways to have. And so it's like educating, and letting learning this for ourselves, and then so that we can also better prepare our children in this,
For sure. And I love your questions. Okay, so because when we're gonna have, before we have those conversations, it's so important to ask ourselves that, because it will put us in more of a parasympathetic state than this like, let me just get through this really quick, as fast as possible.
It's really uncomfortable. I'm uncomfortable.
Let me talk from here. And the whole thing is really uncomfortable. I still remember my mom. So what I do remember about my mom, she wasn't saying it fast. However, I did know she was very uncomfortable. I'm very grateful that she had this conversation. I still remember my sister and I, and it was like, it was a meeting. We need to talk to you.
The bees and the birds and the bees, or something like that.
I don't know how you say that in Spanish. I don't even know how she said it, what she said. What I knew, it was that it was good that we were going to have a family meeting. How she said it was slow. My mom's a teacher, so maybe she'd use some of those techniques on my sister and I.
Yeah. Yeah.
However, the breath was up here, and
Mm.
part
You
of
could still feel the uncomfortableness of it, right?
yeah,
And I think even too, as parents, as guardians, as teachers and leaders,
I
there's
love the leader part that you said because it's true. And that's the word, as leaders.
yeah, as
Yes.
leaders, we're helping lead these youth into, their adulthood. And so it's like, how can we better educate them? And I think, there's something to be said when you're having those conversations is saying, this is a little uncomfortable for me. I'm uncomfortable talking about this. So it clears the air,
Mm,
right? Like I'm still learning, but I also want this to be and I also want this to be a conversation that has a
mm,
place for you to come to
wow.
and know that you can come to me when something comes up, right? So, yes, I'm uncomfortable.
Right.
Yes, this is, whatever, tingly for me to like, and at the same time, I want you to know that you're safe with me here too.
That is key. Wow. Yes. Thank you for saying that because a lot of times we feel we need to have all the answers. And that's very damaging. That I know Martin calls that heaven, hell on earth. That's what that is. It's when
Mhm,
you, especially for coaches, if we think we have all the answers, we're doing a disservice to our clients, right? Because it's trusting the system, it's trusting the process versus whatever the heck you think we are, right? Like we're guiding people. So
mhm,
so for right now, this is what I'm listening or hearing. It start asking first ask ourselves those questions. What makes us uncomfortable?
mhm.
So we're able to understand, identify. It doesn't mean that we have to like get clear, go get help, and go through a year of research or whatever until you get
Right.
comfortable. But it means it's understanding where you're at and being deliberate on saying that it's uncomfortable, but I want to have a conversation. I'm sorry, and I want to take out the butt, and I want to have a
And
conversation. And then
yes.
the third thing, the word that you said, it's safe for you to have this. We'll figure this out.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, it's safe for you to come to me, which is ultimately what we as leaders, teachers, parents, guardians, we want, the children in our lives,
Yeah,
however they are, we want them to feel safe to come to us. And
yeah,
so this a lot of times when there is, like there is like, oh, I don't know if I can talk to them about this because, you know, they won't listen to me or it's not something we talk about, like that's why it ends up having like those kind of experiences happen, or like when they do happen, then there's a lot of guilt and shame because they don't have someone to come to talk
yeah.
about it.
Yeah, it's true. And then, and I know I get it. I mean, I talk to my best friends all the time. And so, yeah, there's a place for peer to peer. But when you're that young, it's important to have guidance from someone that loves you and it's the unconditional love, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Sure, we find that a lot in friendships too, but it's not the same, right? Of
Right.
creating the
Right.
space.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah, because I mean we could have these experiences that we need someone, an adult, to help us through,
yeah, yeah,
and that's, because that could lead into like being raped, right?
yeah.
Or that could be being, assaulted or having some sexual trauma.
Yeah.
That could be a pregnancy. So it's like having someone to be able to go to and know that it's a safe haven.
Yeah. Let's talk about that for a second because that's so key. Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and say it. I was date raped at 21.
Mm,
I did not go to my parents.
mm,
Because I wasn't supposed to be having sex, first of all. And so who do I go to? So I went to the hospital.
mm,
And but where was that emotional support for me? Zero. It was hidden, and it wasn't until years later that I've actually talked about it, worked through it, done language on it, right?
mhm.
So but imagine, right? And you as parents, as leaders, someone that you love go through something traumatic like that and not feeling safe to go and have this conversation because quote unquote that was wrong and not the right thing to do. And I'm going
Mhm.
to challenge Christians more than anything in here, because this fear of going to hell, this fear of sinning, right? This fear will make it worse for your child, your niece, your nephew, your grandchildren. Because for me, that did something besides being traumatic, is that then you feel more alone. And that's, you know, and especially I'm gonna bring it out again, especially for Christians, right? You know, like, evil forces wants things to be kept in secret, hidden, darkness. God wants us to put things out in the light. Be the light, create a safe space for your children, your family to have a conversation. So yeah, I felt very compelled about that, because when you said that rape part, I thought about that, you know, and we don't, or people don't report things, or wives believe that my husband's the leader, therefore I'm not gonna say anything, you know. He leads, you know, it must have been what I was wearing that was too, all this
We
nonsense.
make it. Oh yeah. Oh
It's
oh
not,
yeah. I'm like,
yeah, you're getting all worked up, I'm getting worked up. we
like,
want, and this is what we're starting the conversation, right? Because at the end of the day, you know, it's creating, especially as leaders, you know, if you are a YMCA person, boys, what's it called? Boys and Girls Club.
Yes, I was like, I was gonna be like Backstreet Boys. I don't.
BTS. No, I'm kidding. JCC, or even schools, teachers, and principals, right? You have the funds to bring people along, right? And so actually, I'm gonna bring it here, because I know we talked about your program, because you are in a mission to educate. So and I don't know if the program is out yet, or whenever it will come out. What is some of, because I know you told me one of my dreams is to bring this to the school system. So yeah, tell us a little bit what kind of subject you will talk about. I mean, talk to us a little bit about that, because I'm sure the advice is great, and I'm gonna say that people are gonna need guidance. You know, I'm gonna need guidance. I'm gonna seek out to you more, because I'm
I love it. Yes.
coming out of my shell in here, right? Like, on how I view things. So
yeah, and I mean, me too. It took me a while to, and it took me a lot of working through some stories that I had around sex and sexuality, and expression for that, and all of that. And I also wanted to share too, for me, one of the reasons why I want to get into the school system was because of just with part of like of my lack of education. And this is, you know, a little bit of projection too also. But I also see where if I had better education and understood more about, you know, sex, then like when I was on my rebellious spree, I would have been I would have had more knowledge of how to like take care and be safe, because I ended up being pregnant. Right. And so, and in that, I ended up having an abortion because I was too scared to go to my parents. Right. Because an abortion in Christianity and religion is considered, you know, a negative, awful thing. And so I was too scared. And so I took on so much guilt and shame, and I made it mean so much about myself, when it took me a lot to learn how to like forgive myself,
wow.
you know, and have really a lot of compassion on, I was just doing the best that I knew, like at the time. Like and a lot of that was because I just didn't know any better. I wasn't educated. So that's part of why I want to come in the school systems and help educate. And a lot of it is, and I see this being somewhat of a difficult thing, is because it's about the parents may have like a lot of say around that. And
Yeah.
so it's like, one, I really see is like educating the parents or the guardians, right, and helping them be more comfortable about it, and having it being like this topic. Because I mean, we think about it, like almost everyone, you know, not almost, we've all had our little like experiences of like not maybe talking a lot about sex, but then most of us growing up have had where we, you know, had some oral sex, or we like, you know, did things and played and explored, right? So almost everyone has had that experience. So like as parents, how can we create the space for, if not at home with us as parents, they have at least the school system
Mhm.
that's has this place for them to come to and learn. So it's like, first, I really do think it is getting into like having the parents like let it being okay that this is going to be an education that comes in. It's an important thing to have growing
Yeah.
up and learning, to
Yeah.
have, our children be protected and safe and know how to navigate that in their lives. And then coming in and like having just outside of teaching the anatomy, but it being like, here's how to know your boundaries. Like,
Mhm.
here's how to communicate.
Mhm.
Here's when it's okay, like you can say like, are responsible for letting yourself, like, you get to touch yourself, and like someone else touching you without your permission is wrong.
Right.
It's not okay.
Right.
Like honoring your body and honoring each other's bodies, and like having that kind of conversation.
It's made me think about, okay, so I was part of the YMCA basically all my life since I was 5 years old, even in Peru. I learned how to speak English with the Y, how to swim with the Y. And
Hmm.
one of the things that the Y, and I've been a director for a really long time, managing tons of programs at the same time. And because of crap that has happened to me as a young girl, or really 5, 6 years old, I don't remember, to the event that happened to me that I mentioned, being date rape around 21. I took my job very seriously on protection and policies and procedures.
Mm.
And I am thinking now that I will say that the biggest, what is the word I'm looking for? Not policy nor procedure, but the biggest help, it's to teach children about the word that you just said, is that's called boundaries. Because if they understand that, we wouldn't have to fight so much about all these crazy, nasty people that may come to our sites, when the children will know, you know what? That teacher touched me here and I felt uncomfortable, right?
Mhm.
Imagine a child saying, I didn't like that, or you're not supposed to do that, right?
Mhm.
Then all these policies and procedures that we're basically doing are just putting a whole bunch of rules on top of rules. But imagining already our children knowing what's right and what's wrong. I don't know.
Mhm.
You just said that, and my head spinned a little bit around that, because
Mhm.
imagine bring those kind of conversations, because the YMCA spends like billions of money on what do we call this, this is all risk management, right? So
Mhm.
we
Mhm.
could get sued, and so we're very hardcore, and I bought into it, right? Like, I was hardcore. I mean, I wrote people up. I mean, I didn't care. I mean, obviously I had a lot of baggage to be in really high alert, where I said, under my watch, never. Right? However,
Right. Mhm.
Ashley, I also know the statistics, right? 1 out of 3 women, right? One out
Mhm.
of three girls. That's crazy. Like,
Ugh, yeah.
I'm leading 1,500 children. In my head, I knew that was happening at home, or
Mhm.
it would had happened at any point.
Mhm.
Knowing that drove me insane, right? And so maybe this, I mean, Ashley, I'm gonna support you. When you start going to schools, I'm promoting this video, because
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's like, even starting with boundaries is so, I mean, and I'm sure I'm gonna get a lot of texts and phone calls from a lot of my friends. And that's fine, because what I want is some communication. That's what we're
Mhm.
having.
It's starting the conversation.
It's starting the conversation. And if people do feel uncomfortable, I think this is a great opportunity for you to pause the video and ask yourself, what about this conversation makes you uncomfortable, right? And let's start focusing about creating a society that knows their own boundaries, right?
Mhm.
Where we draw the line, where that's the most, oh, there you go, that's the word I was using. That's prevention 101. Knowing
Ah.
our boundaries, the children knowing their boundaries, is prevention 101.
Mhm. Mhm.
And instead of stacking up rules, it's
Right.
knowing about that. I will
Yeah.
say that I
Yeah.
support that much.
Awesome. Thank you. I love that. Yeah. And I love that prevention too, because what that does is like, it's not going to like, it may still happen, right? But if we're taught how to have and understand and know our boundaries, then instead of keeping it secret
Yeah.
and making ourselves be wrong
Yeah.
and bad and make something mean about us, it's like, then that gives us like, oh, well, like this happened to me with, uncle or dude or like
Exactly.
woman, I don't want to, like it happens on both ends, right? And so
Yep.
it's like um and so it gives it to where like, yes, it may happen no matter what, like it may happen, and it's going to be less likely to happen again if they're taught
Exactly.
about boundaries, like you're saying. So it is a prevention, right? It's like
Yeah.
it's not going to keep it away from 100%. We don't know, it's
Exactly.
like it's still going to happen because
Yeah.
it's just unfortunately a part of our society right now. But the more we can educate everyone in their sex education, the less likely it's going to be the big number that it is.
Yes, and thank you for also reminding me. Yeah, it's for both. We're talking about boys. I know for boys, yeah, it's like 1 out of 3 girls. For boys, is 1 out of 5. It's up there, and I know I was very shocked. I know the statistics that I learned because I made my bachelor's is in youth development. So one
Mhm.
of the things you learn is all the statistics. It's women in society, social problems, juvenile delinquency. That was like my whole training on like how society works. Because guess what? I'm gonna be in community, so you should know a thing or two about what's happening, which I'm very, very grateful for my Springfield College. Yes, shout out to all my friends from Springfield College.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so yeah, you're right. You're right, and this is for both, and I know that we with all these movements, it's more like yeah, we're avoiding certain topics right now. We're disrupting. We're creating good trouble in a sense to
That's
start
right.
conversation.
Good trouble. I
Good
like it.
trouble. I love
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
And I really, I mean, like, this is a really great source, and this is a lot of like the program that I'm going to be launching.
Okay.
This is a lot of the meat, the backbone of what I'm doing with, and it talks about too in here. Outside of that, like even at the beginning of the book, it talks about having the conversation with our children at a young age, like
Mm.
starting it at a young age, right? And so
What
and
age
it's
is that, Ashley?
I would say, I mean, like, I think when you like find them like touching themselves is like,
Mhm.
because they're like curious and it's like, oh, this feels good. I think that's
Sure.
when, it's having that conversation.
Or
Um,
boundaries too, right?
boundaries, right? And so like even with kids when they're like, because like for me, even like I was like playing with myself out in the living room of my home growing up, and it freaked my mom out, and
Right.
she was like, she yelled at me and sent me to my room. And so then that, like, for me, I created a story around, oh, it's not okay to touch myself, right? um and so it's like learning to say, okay, like touching yourself is okay, right? And here's when it's more appropriate, like here's when it's better to
Not in
do it.
school.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Maybe not in the living room in front of your whole family, I don't know. you know.
Not during
But
Christmas dinner.
yeah, yeah, and it's like, yeah, it's like learning that. And then even calling it what it is, like, like I know for me, and I still call it, like, I have little fun nicknames, right? But it's like calling it your vulva, right? Your vagina, your penis, rather than, oh, don't touch your cookie,
Right. Your wee
or oh,
wee.
your wee wee,
Your
and
pee
it's like,
pee. Yes. Yes.
so it's like
Absolutely.
giving them and like letting them know that that's their anatomy.
Mhm. That's a
uh,
great word,
mhm,
anatomy. I love it. I'm a
mhm.
science nerd when it comes to that. So yeah,
Yeah.
very, very true. Very, very true. Ashley, this is great. And so if you are liking this conversation, Ashley could be reached at her Instagram handle, which is
Ashley dot D as in Diane dot Mays.
Maze. Got it. Yeah, we're gonna link it here. And I know you're gonna have a program very soon. The programs may change. her Instagram, it's gonna be there.
Yes, that will stay.
Yeah, the conversation is gonna be there, and it's exciting to know that there's a guide, right? And that's what you're calling yourself a sex love communication coach, right?
Mhm.
I would, yeah. So it's thank you for the things you've sharing, and I know we went deep and a little like especially me, I was like when it comes
Me too. Correct. Yeah.
protecting.
Mhm.
And I'm in a new journey, so I'm excited about that. And one of the things that, especially unlearning and transitioning, it's what helps shaming, because that's huge. That was part of
Mm.
my life growing up, and even when I was part of the tradition, the church that I was in, the shame was still there. It got carried. It looked different. However, it was that threat that came from childhood
Mm.
all the way, and now I'm learning to unpeel that. Not unpeel, like
Mm.
rip that crap out.
You're right. Well, you're peeling back the layers of it, right? That have been built up around it, right? And so now you're peeling back the layers. And that's a lot of what I've been starting to do too is, and it was something I offered in the group, is doing story work
Mhm.
around sex and sexuality. So it's like, going in, like giving a plug. Yes, I have my programs, but really, if you want to dive deeper in understanding, where you're at and where, as far as like why you're uncomfortable with sex, and like if you've had any like trauma that has happened, which most people have, like
Yep.
let's dive into that and understand it and help be able to move through it so that it's easier for you to talk about,
Yeah.
and there's less guilt and shame around it, right? There's the healing that comes from it, so then that you can show up for your kids, your children, your community.
Yeah, you're creating that space to answer those questions that you said. What are you uncomfortable to talk about, right?
Mhm,
That's good.
mhm.
When is your next one
What?
on the Unlifted community?
Oh, when's my next?
Or do you have one already? I thought you put something in the Unlifted community. Was
I
that more
did,
like a
yes.
one-on-one?
Yeah, so that's one-on-one. So doing like some story work with some of the crew, and yeah, so that's something that I do, is like, one-on-one story work, diving deeper into understanding some of our sex and sexuality trauma stories, beliefs, and really finding what is true for us and healing some of that. And then I have like programs that are like learning, self-discovery, right, education, and then integration.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I like it. Okay, so I see why you did the one-on-one. Imagine everyone's uncomfortable in a big group.
Like,
I love it. Ashley, thank you so much for this
thank you.
conversation that we're starting here. I
Mhm.
appreciate you. Why Superstar supports you.
Thank you.
We're integrating ourselves into the school system, so I know I'm gonna keep my ears out if the principal is open. I know who to contact, right? Because we've been working with elementary and middle school for a long time, and we recently just entered high school. So I'm
Mm,
excited.
congratulations. That's awesome.
You
Yes.
said you want to start these conversations even earlier, and I could see a parent workshop around this topic, right? It's
Hmm.
beneficial. So excuse me, I'm
Yeah.
going to be scheming on how to put that in proposal. I love writing proposals for schools. It's my jam. That's how I close contracts.
That's awesome. Yes.
So yeah, I'm thinking about this too, as the conversation gets bigger. If you're watching and you have any questions, leave them right here in the comments. I'm sure Ashley, you follow the youth developer, correct?
Yes, I do.
So
Yes.
Ashley will get a notification. Let us know any questions you have. And again, Ashley could be reaching her Instagram handle that's right now at the bottom. You can reach out to her. I know you have retreats. All the information is in there on some of the things that you are doing for the community.
Yes.
Thank you
Thank you. Thank you
so
so
much.
much. This was a lot of fun.
Yes, absolutely. I love it. All right, Miss Ashley Mays. We'll talk soon.
Sounds good.